face cam for this, just so you know it's still me, but now it gets disabled. And in this video, we're going to be talking about why the Eagles are likely to collapse, but some factors that might make this different from 2023. The reality is that in both 2023 and 2025, the Eagles were absolute frauds. They could not win games decisively. Games often came down to fluke events or the refs in some cases, or bad coaching decisions on the other side, and the reality is that now the Eagles are 8-4, which is their worst mark, in a season, their worst record through 12 games in a season since 2021. And in both October and November, could only manage to achieve records of 500, which is pretty bad, especially for 2 months in a row. That's 500 over this entire stretch. After they went 4-0 in September, they now look bad. I mean, to be fair, the Eagles, it is like a weird season for them, but still. And look at 2023 and the Eagles, what happened too. They won games, but they barely won games. They didn't really win any games decisively. They started off 10-1, then they collapsing a 1-5 down the stretch and losing a wild card round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's what wound up happening in that case. And I mean, the collapse was so obvious. And in this case, it might not look quite as bad. But then when you realize they had a 21-0 lead against the Cowboys and they blew it in a game that would basically all but assure division control, and now they've let the Cowboys back into the race, that's the bigger issue. In 2023, the Cowboys are 2 back with 6 to play. Now they're 1.5 back with 5 to play at this point. It's gotten bad. And yeah, this is their worst start since they started 5-7 in 2021, in which, obviously, they had a very poor start. They started off 3-6, but then they were able to have some success late in the year, get to 9-8, and make the playoffs. This year, 9-8 is not going to be enough. I can tell you that much. The NFL is very top heavy this year in both leagues, really. Looking at, where these teams are right now, in the AFC, you probably figure you need to go 10-7 to make the playoffs at this rate because of everything going on. Chargers, Jaguars, and Bills go 500, and that would be it. The exception might be in the AFC North, where the division winner might be able to sneak into the playoffs with a 9-8 record. And in the NFC, it's very top heavy. Again, NFC South division winner, that could be 9-8, but I don't see a wild card getting it at 9-8. Not when they're as good as they are. The 49ers are 8-4. The Seahawks are 8-3. The Packers are 8-3-1. Of course, there's still a week of football left to be played, but still. So, as far as things stand, here's the breakdown. The Eagles' loss to the Bears means that the Bears are now a game in front of the Eagles and have the head-to-head tiebreaker against them. This effectively eliminates the Eagles from contention for the 1 or the 2 seed, as the Bears effectively have a 2-game edge. Now the Eagles did beat the Rams. The Rams the Rams this week, they play the Panthers at 6-6. They do play in Carolina, but that's probably going to be a loss for the Panthers. I really hope that they win, because if they win, at least then there's a chance the Eagles can jump the Rams. Note that if all these teams are tied, it comes down to conference record. The Eagles are 7-3 in conference, Bears are 6-2, Rams 4-2. But the only way the Eagles really have a chance to jump the Rams is if the Rams lose to the Panthers. If that doesn't happen, then they're 10-2, and yeah, still two back with 5 to play. But what you really got to worry about is the 6-5-1 Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are only a game and a half back of the Eagles. Now, a tiebreaker is unlikely to matter unless the Eagles tie a game, which is super rare. So you really got to think of it as either one game with the Eagles have the tiebreaker, or 2 games with the Cowboys have the tiebreaker. Like, you effectively have to go into that with that attitude. If the Cowboys win out and the Eagles lose 2, then the Cowboys will win the division. However, that's a little bit unlikely. I think if the Eagles go 3-2, that should be enough. Looking at the Cowboys' remaining schedule, yeah, looking at the Cowboys' remaining schedule, they had to play the Detroit Lions in Detroit. That's gonna be a tough game. I know the Lions are 7-5 and outside the playoff picture, but it's still never tough. It's still never easy for the Cowboys to go up against Detroit. They play the Vikings at home, so they'll probably win that game. They play the Chargers at home, so that's kind of more like a toss-up, and it really is tough to see what's going to happen. Then they play the Commanders and the Giants. They'll probably win those two. I see the Cowboys realistically going 4-1, maybe 3-2 down the stretch. They'll probably finish 10-6-1, 9-7-1 maybe. What it really comes down to is how good their defense plays, because in games like the Packers, they dropped 40 points on them, but they could still only come away with a tie because the defense was that bad. They lost the game to the Panthers because their defense was really bad. Um, the Broncos just laid absolute BTA on them. We know that. But the Broncos are also one of the best teams in football right now. They somehow managed to lose to the Cardinals, but I feel like they always lose to the Cardinals. Now, as far as the Eagles' remaining schedule, it is much tougher. The common denominator with Dallas is that they both play the Chargers, but the Eagles have to play the Chargers in Los Angeles on prime time. And then they play the Raiders at home, but playing against Pete Carroll for the Eagles is never easy, and they beat us in 2023 with Drew Lock, so I really have to see what the momentum is. Plus, if the Eagles are an absolute free fall, then if the Eagles are an absolute free fall, then you know it might not matter who their opponent is; they might still just lose games. Then they have to play the Commanders twice, and it's going to be tough to sweep them. And then they have to go to Buffalo and play the Bills. So as much as I said that I see Dallas going 4-1, maybe 3-2, the Eagles could absolutely go 2-3 or even 1-4. 10-7 is probably not going to win a division. 9-8 certainly is not going to be enough to get it done. So even though the Eagles, probably 3-2 might be enough, because I don't think the Cowboys are going to win out, which would involve them winning 8 in a row. That's a tall order for any team. If the Eagles can't even play 500 ball, then the Cowboys don't need to win out. Reality is that in 2023, when the Eagles choked to give the Cowboys a division, it wasn't even like the Cowboys played super well down the stretch. I mean, yeah, they gave absolute belt to ass to the Philadelphia Eagles when they played, but they were 8-3 when the collapse started. They went 4-2 down the stretch, including back-to-back losses on the road to the Bills and Dolphins. They didn't play their best ball, but the Eagles just was so bad down the stretch that they went 1-5 and they handed the division to the Cowboys on a silver platter. I don't think with how the conference tiebreaker worked and the Cowboys going 8-4 in conference while the Eagles went 7-5, I don't think that I don't think that 2-4 would have been enough. But if the Eagles went 3-3 in that stretch, they would have won the division. I mean, if the Eagles could have just beaten the trash Cardinals at home and then went to MetLife and beat the Giants, they're 13-4, and maybe they lose first round in the playoffs, but they at least make it there. But they at least make it as a division title and force whoever the 7th seed is to come into Philadelphia and beat them. It's tough. And what makes it really tough is that at least in 2023, the Eagles, even though they collapsed, were pretty much guaranteed the 5 seed and a spot in the playoffs. Now, there's a chance the Eagles don't even make it to the playoffs. 0-5 and they're 0-5 and they finish 8-9, they're not making it. 1-4 and they finish 9-8, they're not making it. 2-3 and they're 10-7, that might not be enough. As far as teams that are fringe to make it in the playoffs, they have the tiebreaker against the Packers, but again, it's a little bit unlikely to matter. They have the tiebreaker against the Lions. Cowboys, they would have won the division at this point, so they're not going to matter. And as far as conference record goes, they're 7-3. But in this kind of a collapse, they actually might be 9-3 if their 2 wins are against the Commanders. But if they split with the Commanders, it's 8-4. If they get swept by the Commanders, it's 7-5. Although at that point, it's basically game over for the Philadelphia Eagles. But anyway, if they go like 8-4 in conference, and we assume a nightmare scenario, or even 9-3. You look at these teams in terms of they haven't played. The 49ers are 8-2 in conference, so they're probably going to have a better conference record than the Philadelphia Eagles if they have the same record. And they're also 8-4. They play the Browns, and they'll probably win that game, although the Browns have a weird history with the 49ers. The Titans, another probable win for the 49ers. The Colts, a game that the 49ers might lose. Then they play the Bears and the Seahawks. So there is actually a decent chance they finish 8-4 in conference. But they could also go 9-3 or 10-2. The tiebreaker, the 49ers are probably going to beat the Eagles on when it comes down to conference record. Seattle, they have the Vikings, Falcons, Colts, Rams, Panthers, 49ers. So they have all but one game left in conference. They'll probably lose to the Colts, though. The Colts are a good team, though you never know. They probably beat the Vikings, Falcons, and Panthers, but the 49ers and Rams could be tough. Either way, though, they're probably going 9-3 or 8-4, or maybe best case scenario for the Eagles 7-5 in conference. So this is a really tough case for Philly because if they fall out of contention, they might not even get the 5 seed. They might miss the playoffs altogether, or they might be stuck as a really bad seed. The chance of them being first-round exits are astoundingly high. If we look at NFL playoff odds for the Eagles, we have this playoff status thing. There's also one for the New York Times, but that's usually password protected. If we look at the Eagles, their chance of getting the 1 seed is down to 5%, and their chance of getting the 2 seed is down to 20%. They have a 55% chance of getting the 3 seed, which seems to be the most realistic scenario. The 4 seed is 12%. There's a less than 1% chance they get the 5 seed. Again, if they're falling to wild card status, they're probably not a 5 seed either. They're probably a 6 seed at 2% or a 7 seed at 3%, and there's actually a 4% chance they miss the playoffs. All in all, the chances that the Eagles win the division is 87%, I think. No, 92%. But if they don't make it, it's looking dicey. Um, the Cowboys still have a 72% chance of missing the playoffs entirely. Um, they realistically can't get a 1 or a 2, so a 3 is kind of the most likely scenario for them. And yeah. Yeah, that's what's going on there. So this again gives the odds that each team makes the playoffs, and what seed they're likely to get. Red means that you control your own destiny for that spot. X means it's literally mathematically impossible. You're eliminated from that spot. The Giants have X's everywhere because they're eliminated from the playoffs. And green means that you control your own destiny for that spot. For example, the Packers, they've controlled their own destiny to get the 2 seed. They really do. If they Packers win out and they go 11-3-1, they're the 2 seed. They control their own destiny for that. The Seahawks don't control their own destiny to win the division at all, neither do the 49ers. If they win out and they go, 14-3, that still doesn't mean that the Seahawks are guaranteed to win the division, because the Rams could go 15-2 in that scenario. At this point, neither the Lions or Cowboys control their own destiny to make the playoffs. Panthers actually do, for some odd reason. I don't know why. The Panthers of all teams control their own destiny. But we can also look at the scenario and see who the Eagles are likely to play as a 6 seed. At this point, it's looking like it's going to be the Seahawks or 49ers, maybe Packers. So, if the Seahawks come to Philadelphia, chalk it up as a loss. I just can't see the Eagles doing anything against Seattle. 49ers, I think the Eagles probably lose that game as well. Their best chance is probably against the Packers to win in a wild card round. Then they got to go play the 2 seed, which is probably going to be the Bears, and they'll have to play in Chicago. I just don't see that happening. I just really don't. But it even gives you like the odds. They have a matchup for the first round and what the odds for each team is. And yeah, it does say 49ers, Seahawks, Packers are the most likely for the first round. Then Bears is 10%, so I guess this is the scenario where they fall out. Either the Eagles or the Bears fall out of the division title. They actually have a decent chance of matching up with the Lions. 7% chance they match with the Cowboys, and I'm not sure in which case if they're home or away. But a 4% chance they're outright eliminated from the playoffs, which is not good. Yeah, this is saying the Eagles' odds to make the playoffs have trickled down from over 99% down to 95%. And again, you can see the scenarios of what happens. Like if we, and actually the simulator doesn't, for some reason you have to get the app. I don't know. But if we If we assume they lose 2 games, then they're making the playoffs for 86%, and they might not win the division in that scenario. So it's tough. We've really got to hope the Cowboys can lose some games, and other teams can help us out a little bit for the Eagles to have their best shot at winning the division. You really want the Cowboys to start losing some games.